Hey, good morning, everybody. We're glad that you're here. And look who's back.
Good morning. Thank you.
I didn't get that kind of reception, Josh. Why?
I don't know. I don't know. Well, good morning, everybody. We're glad and we're happy to see you, and we're excited that next week we'll be hopefully seeing you in person. And so as we get started today, I noticed something as I watched back the last couple weeks. I noticed that Woody's always the one that asks the questions. You're never the guy that has to answer.
Yeah, you're right.
So
I don't know the answer.
So today I kind of set up a couple questions for Woody, and so they all kind of relate to the time that we're in right now. So Woody, the first question is how do you spell quarantine?
Can you give me the root word of the quarantine? K-W, quar, O-R. Oh, that's not right. Q-U-A-R-E-N-T-I-N-E?
I had A-N, but I might have wrote it down wrong. I don't know.
I think it is. I have A-N written down. Okay. All right, go ahead.
You got that one wrong. Okay, the next two are really just your opinion. So,
Okay.
and feel free to answer at home.
According to my wife, those are wrong too
Yeah.
all the time, but go ahead.
Feel free to answer on your own there at home as well. But the second one would be, what was your favorite thing, or what's your favorite thing about kind of the stay-at-home order? Getting to spend time at home more, what was your favorite thing about that?
Well, I did get to spend more time with my wife.
Okay. So, yeah, he's trying to get bonus points there. I see. All right, and the third one would be this. If you could have sheltered in place in anywhere in the world, where would you have taken your shelter?
Wow. Wherever my wife is.
Man, did you get in trouble this week or what? Okay. All right. Well, this past few weeks, those are kind of some of the phrases that we've heard. We've heard quarantine. We've heard stay at home. We've heard shelter in place. And those are phrases that leading up to these last couple months, I don't think we really used. Many of us wouldn't even have known what they were. But it's all because of the times that we're living in. And although all of those things may have been necessary, it was stressful, and it's been stressful. And I know it's been hard and tough for people and scary. But today we want to introduce this idea of sheltering in God's grace. And we're specifically going to be looking at Psalm 107 today, and looking at that passage. And in that, as we get started, God's people are returning from exile in Babylon. And as they're returning, they're encouraged to remember God's grace and God's love. And we too are almost, in a sense, returning to a new life, kind of in a sense, going back to our old lives as things are starting to open up. And we don't know what's going to happen next. I know that some people are really anxious and excited to get back to this normal kind of living, but I also know that there are people that are scared of what's going to happen next. Is this going to come back and even grow larger, and the disease even be harder? But the thing is there's no right or wrong, right? But there's all this uncertainty. And today we want to kind of share this place of protection with you. This idea of sheltering in God's grace. When a storm hits, you're told to what? Woody, what are you told to find?
Shelter.
Find shelter. You're supposed to find this place that you can find some protection, that you're safe in. And today we're going to take shelter in Psalm 107. Verses 2 and 3, and as we get started, the psalmist is writing to those who have been redeemed, those who have been at the hands of their foes. They've been captive from the hands of their foes. And we can relate to returning from a scary situation. I'm sure that they were scared. They were full of fears of the unknown as they returned home. The doubts about how things were going to turn out when they returned home. And I think we too, like I've said over and over again, we can relate to that. Right. With all of these concerns about this new phase of this pandemic, we can relate to the idea of we're not sure what's really going to happen next. So as we dive into this, Woody and I are going to kind of break this down. We're going to learn about God's people's different conditions. And really there's 4 different conditions, but we're going to find, and you'll find real soon, that there's really one common solution to every condition. And so they're feeling all of these different predicaments, and we're going to learn about God's amazing grace and how He can deliver us. And one of the things I found neat, Woody, before I let you take off here, is that as I read Psalm 107, you read about all of these people coming they're all going to the same place, but they all came from different areas of life. You know, some we're going to find out that some were maybe in prison, and some were lost, and some were at sea, but they all are trying to get back to the same place, and they're all kind of in this time of unknown. And we too, throughout this pandemic, many of us have come from different situations. Maybe you've been at home with your family this whole time. Maybe your work told you to stay at home, and so you've spent all this time with your family. Or maybe you're someone that lives alone, and you've been alone this whole time. Or maybe you're somebody that works in the healthcare department, and you're on the front lines, and you've kind of been self-isolated. But there's all of those different situations. But hopefully today we can all find hope in those situations. So
right, yeah. And Paul, as Josh said, the psalmist is writing this as these people are returning from Babylonian captivity, God's people, and they're described in the 4 different ways, but it's the same answer. And the first one is this. He tells us, if you've lost your way, look to God to guide you. And the psalmist says in verse 4 and 5, he says, some wandered in desert wastelands, finding no way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. They were trying to get home, and they were lost, and they were hungry. And I don't know, Josh, have you ever been lost?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's times where I've been lost driving, and Amy asked me to stop and ask for directions, and being a man,
and you say no way.
I don't do that. And you got the GPS and all of that. But there was a time where I was really lost and afraid. My brother and I, and a couple of friends, we decided we were going to go hike in this big game reserve, thousands of acres in Tennessee. And we have our map and our compass as Boy Scouts. We were going to be prepared and do all of that. And we take off through this game reserve, and all of a sudden it starts raining. And not being very smart scouts, the first thing we did is our map got wet and disintegrated. And so we are in the middle of this game reserve. It is just raining. We don't know what to do. We follow this creek for a while, thinking that'll lead us to somewhere, the ocean or something. But anyway, we follow this creek, and then we see this big snake, and we both run. And I'm talking, we start out hiking at 8 in the morning. Now it's dark, and we're hungry. And my brother gets sick, and we finally find the dirt road, and it has been raining all day, and we're wet, and we find some plastic, and we build up a tent. And the 2 other guys say, you just stay here with your brother. We're going to go try to find a place. They try to break into a trailer. And if you've ever been in the woods at night, and every sound you hear, you think, what was that? It's Bigfoot. Oh, no, it's Sasquatch, and all of that. And we sit there, and I don't know how long it was. It seemed like hours. And finally, we hear this, and this truck rattling down the road.
Were you calling cows?
No, that was Tommy. But anyway, we hear that truck rattling down the road, and these 3 guys jump out and wanting to know what's wrong. And I thought, oh, great, we're going to die. It's over. And come to find out, it was 3 drunk coon hunters that were out hunting coon that night. One of them was the judge of the county we were in. And he, we'll help you boys, come on in. And so then they throw us all in the truck, and I'm thinking, we are going to die. I'm starting hearing, ding, 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 ding. I mean, I think it is over. And they take us home, and come to find out they were nice guys, they fed us. But just during that time when I was lost, I was afraid, I was hungry, I was helpless, and as you said, we were looking for a place of safety. And there are some people during this time who don't know which direction to go with their life. Maybe they've lost their job and they're wandering around searching for a purpose, or maybe they've lost a family member, a loved one, and they're looking for answers and searching for it to all make sense. Or maybe, as you said, they're alone and they're just looking for help to do with that. And people are lost during this time, and just during life. Some people are lost, and they're wandering from relationship to relationship looking for love. There's some people that are wandering from addiction to addiction just looking for peace. There's people that are wandering from thrill to thrill looking for a purpose and for meaning. There's people wandering from job to job looking for meaning. And God says, I have the purpose for you. It's to glorify me with your life, and I can give you meaning. And so that's what these folks are doing in the 107th Psalm. As they're coming back home, it's scary, and they're wondering, and they don't know what's going to happen or where to go. I mean, they've been in captivity for years. And then in verse 6, it says they cried out to the Lord, and they helped them. And that's what our answer is. If we're wondering and we don't know we're looking to guide us. We don't know which direction to go. The key is to cry out to the Lord. And one way to cry out to the Lord and then look in His Word for that guidance.
Right. And then as we continue, there's another part to this. Part 2, it says, if you are chained by guilt, let God set you free. And as we read verses 10 through 12, it's not really the most pleasant reading.
No.
It says that some sat in darkness and utter darkness. They were prisoners of suffering and iron chains. Because they had rebelled against God's commands. And they despised the plans of the Most High. So He subjected them to bitter labor. They stumbled, and there was no one there to help. And so you're reading about, it's not something you'd want to sit down and read, because you're reading about misery.
Yes.
You're reading about discomfort and distress. And Woody, I don't know if you've ever been miserable before, been in discomfort or stress, but I know for me, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, when's probably the time that I was most distressed or in discomfort? And I thought about, it was my summer of my freshman year of college. I came home from college, and I was working as the intern at the church, and it was my first Sunday back, and we were at the youth center, and we were playing basketball, and I thought I would be the cool intern that would try to impress the kids. And so a kid shot the ball, and I jumped up and grabbed the net, and I think, were you there, Caleb? You might have been there. I climbed up the net, and I was hanging on the rim, and then I decided I had to get down somehow, and so I let go of the rim and I landed on the ball.
Ooh.
And I won't give you all the details, but I broke my foot. Of course, I still had to be try to be the cool intern, so I stumbled to the car. I said, "Okay, guys, see you next week." I crawl into my car. I drive with my left foot all the way to my house, where we lived. I had to go upstairs to get into our house, and I'm crawling up the steps, and my mom comes out, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "My foot, Mom, it hurts. I don't know what I did with it." So she's like, "Let me see it." And I pull it down, and there's a softball on my foot. And so she says, "Get in the car." And I remember driving I was riding in the passenger seat of the van, and I'm just hitting the door because I'm so frustrated, because I had all of these plans. I had all of these hopes that for that summer I was going to play golf every day. I was going to do all these things with these kids, but I made a mistake. And I put myself in that situation. Mm-hmm. And so as we read about the Israelites in this situation, they're in a cold prison, they're chained, and they're waiting to be executed. They're almost, in a sense, hopeless. But why are they there, is the question we ask. Why are they there? And if you read it, it says that it was because they rebelled. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, they are the reason they're there. They've almost put themselves in this prison. And although the psalmist is talking specifically about the Israelites and their Babylonian experience, we too can almost relate to this spiritually, because I know many of us have been in a similar situation. We put ourselves in a prison of guilt. We've allowed sin to build walls around us. We've allowed regret to almost chain us down, and we're stuck in this idea of self-pity. And because sin has that ability to make us feel like we're isolated. Mm-hmm. And it almost builds those walls around us. And so that's where they're at. And so maybe some of us are in that same situation. We feel like we're in a dark, cold room, and we're the only ones that are in that situation, and there's no way out. But notice what they did. As you keep reading verse 13, it says, they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He saved them from their distress. He brought them out of the darkness, and He broke away their chains. Mm-hmm. What He did is He truly gave them freedom from all of their guilt. And we love the idea of freedom. I know my son, I talk about Jameson a lot, but I'm a proud dad. So during this quarantine, we've been at home a lot. And then we've had some rainy days, and Jameson hates rainy days because it means he's stuck in the house. Mm-hmm. And so we had a stretch last week, I think it was, where it rained a few days. We didn't get to go outside. And then Saturday came, and it was beautiful out Saturday. I was outside. The kid woke up at 7:30. We were outside from 7:30 till noon. And then he napped from noon to 2. And then we were outside from 2:30 till 7:30. Because he loves the idea of not being surrounded by walls. He could just run around, do whatever he wanted in the yard. He was free. Mm-hmm. I got another example for you, and some of you will relate to this, and some of you will have no idea what I'm doing here. But there's a movie series called Harry Potter.
There's a picture of Tommy.
Yeah, there's a picture of Tommy. That is Dobby. He is a house elf, and his job is he's literally a slave for one of the families there in the movie, the Malfoy family. And he literally has to do anything they say he has to do. There's no way of him getting free. The only way he gets freedom is if the master gives him a piece of his clothing. Mm-hmm. And so in The Chamber of Secrets is the second movie, or the second book if you like to read. The whole movie plays out. There's this scene at the end where Harry Potter has this book, and he's trying to give it to Dobby's master. But before he gives it to him, Harry puts his sock in the book, because he knew he hands the book to Malfoy, and Malfoy flings it at the house elf, and he catches it, and he opens it up, and he sees the sock. And so technically, the owner had given him a sock, and that's the face right there, if you see that picture. I know he's a creepy-looking dude, but you can almost see the joy in his face because he's now free. For his whole life, he's been a slave and been controlled by all of those things, but there, he's finally set free. And so this morning, we want to share with you that opportunity that you have to be set free from that guilt. Many of us are probably tired of feeling the guilt, the shame, and the regret. And God says in Psalms that if we just cry out to the Lord, He can give us freedom. What's so cool is He not only takes them out of the darkness, but He sets them free. Yeah. And God can do the same thing with us.
Then there's a third condition that describes these people, the Israelites, as they're coming back from Babylonian captivity. He said, some became fools through their rebellious ways and suffered affliction because of their iniquities. They loathed all food and drew near to the gates of death. And the lesson is, if you're ready to give up hope, let God's amazing grace give you hope. When you shelter in grace, you can do that. And it's describing a group of people who are sick and depressed and ready to die. You know, guys, life is messy. Life's not fair. At times, life is sickening. Just something happens, it just makes you sick at your stomach. And again, in this case, they're in the situation here because of their rebellious lifestyle. But the spiritual lesson for us, Josh, is this: is that unforgiven sinners are sick, and you just loaded with that. And Paul even takes it a step further in Ephesians chapter 2. Paul takes it a step further when he says, "You were dead in your transgressions and sins." Paul says sin not only makes you sick, but that sin makes you dead, because if you ignore God's will. I love shows like you watch. What was that, Harry Potter?
That was Harry Potter.
I love shows like NCIS and CSI, and one of the main characters. Yeah, one of the main characters of that is the coroner, and you always Now, that is the gross part. They do the autopsy to see what causes the death. Well, Paul is sort of doing a spiritual autopsy here in Ephesians chapter 2, and he says, we are dead because of our sins. Our sins made us, killed us and dead. And when death is nothing more but separation. When I die physically, my soul separates from my body. Physical death is we separate for our loved ones. Spiritual death is when we separate ourselves from God's love and forgiveness and the life He wants us to live. And that's spiritual death. And you say, well, what's the big deal about being dead and not just sick? Well, dead people can't do anything to help themselves. And when I realize that our sin makes us sick, and to the point we don't want to eat, as the psalmist describes it, and eventually if you don't eat, you die. I've done a lot of funerals. I've never had a dead person answer me back yet. Dead dress themselves. I died once. I think you know that. I was on the treadmill and got off, and it didn't go well. And the doctor says, "Woody, you all right?" And I was like, "No," and I'm dead. And the next thing I remember is him beating on my chest and cold blue. And I opened my eyes. Hey, Dr. Cold Blue, and he said, "Yeah, it was you," and all that. And when I was dead, there was nothing I could do to bring me back to life. And when I'm dead in my sins, there is nothing I can do to bring me back to life. But I love Ephesians chapter 2, verse 4. It says, but God, who's rich in His mercy, brought us back to life through Jesus Christ. And it's the same thing that the psalmist says when he says, they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He saved them and healed them and rescued them from the grave. And that's what Jesus would do for us. So if you're just sick of life and you're just saying, I don't know if I can make it another day, cry out to the Lord and He'll give you hope. And he'll help you deal with all of those things that are going. He will rescue you. And so that's what God's amazing grace does.
And the fourth and kind of final condition is this. It's if you are afraid because of life's storms, He will give you peace. The fourth description, if you would, it's almost this sailor stuck in a boat in the middle of the ocean. It reads like this. It said, someone out on the sea in ships, and they were merchants of the mighty waters. They saw the works of the Lord and His wonderful deeds in the deep. For he spoke and stirred up a tempest that lifted the high waves. They mounted up to the heavens and went down to the depths. In the peril their courage melted away. They reeled and staggered like drunkards. They were at their wits' end. And so they're stuck in this storm, and they've seen all the beauties and all the lows and the highs, but now they're kind of at this point where they don't know what to do next. And we've all been caught up in a storm before, in a physical, literal storm. I remember we went to the Bahamas. I don't know, it's been quite some time now. But we got into, I don't remember where, but the Nassau, and then we took the plane to the little island, right?
Yeah.
Well, when we got to Nassau, it was storming. And then they showed me the plane that we were supposed to ride on, and it was some
Flintstones.
It was. I'm pretty sure our cargo was above our head. It was not fun. But I'm looking around, and all I see is lightning, and it's thundering, and they keep telling us that we're still going to go out on this plane. And I remember being terrified because all I could see was the storm around us. And many of you, maybe you've been driving before, and your windshield wipers just aren't working fast enough, and you still can't see. And life has those storms. But it has even greater storms sometimes. It's the storms of temptation, the storms of suffering and sorrow. And what I found happens oftentimes, Woody, is after one storm, sometimes it comes in real fast and then a second storm follows. And sometimes it feels like you can just be being beaten by the storms of life. And sometimes you can lose hope and almost just be fearful. But what we find here in Psalm is that it doesn't end with verse 27. It doesn't just say they're at their wits' end and it's all over, but instead it says that they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm to a whisper, and the waves of the sea were hushed. All of that in His grace, He rescues us. And so whatever storm that we are in, whatever tough time, difficult time that we're in, if we call out to God, He has the ability to calm the storm. But sometimes He doesn't maybe He doesn't always calm the storm, but sometimes He calms the person. I go back and I look at Mark chapter 4 where the disciples are out on the boat and with Jesus, and the storm hits. And the disciples are running around and they're screaming and yelling because the storm is crashing into the boat and the boat's filling up water, and they're just panicking. All the while Jesus is sleeping. He's not worried about it. He's not concerned about it. And so they go wake up Jesus and they say, Jesus, this storm, it's going to flood us and all those things. And He calms the storm. And so when I read that, I read about how He's able to calm the physical storm. But as I read it in my daily life, I notice that when I read it, it calms me. To know that Jesus has the ability to calm the physical storm, He also has the ability to calm the things that are going on in my life. And so that's important to remember, especially in times like this when it just feels like it's one thing after another, that God does have the ability to calm things down. And so let's go to God in prayer. Dear God, we thank You so much for who You are. God, we thank You for the power that You have. And God, so many times we're in life and maybe we feel like we're lost. Maybe we feel like we're trapped in our guilt and our shame and just so many different situations, God. But we're so thankful for in all of our situations that we know that we can call out to You. That You are a God that can save us, that You're a God that can give us hope, and You're a God that can calm us. God, thank You so much for that. Thank You for Jesus. Thank You for all of the examples He set for us and just the ways that we can read about Your Word and be calmed through it. God, we pray that You be with us throughout this new stage of life as we go into this, and things are going to be different. God, I pray that we can lean on You, that we don't lean on our own understanding, but we lean on You and trust in You in these moments. Thank You so much for that and that ability. God, thank You for listening when we call out. It's in Your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And as Josh said, I want you to notice that the solution to all four conditions was the same. That they cried out to the Lord, and God saved them. You may be wandering through life with no plan or no purpose. You may be imprisoned by guilt and regret. You may have made some bad choices and you don't know how it's going to turn out. You may be just so stressed over what we're going through with this pandemic that you don't, you're just worried and you're so sick that you're just ready to give up and you've lost hope. Maybe you're in the middle of a storm and you just want peace. All you need to do is cry out to God. And the other thing, Josh, is every time they cried out, God was there and He saved them from their distress. So you say, well, how do I cry out to God? Well, do you believe Jesus Christ is God's Son? If the answer is yes, then are you ready to maybe do things God's way? And you know, when I cry out to Him, you're saying, God, it's called repentance. I'm going to change my way of thinking and look at life your way and start trying to live life your way. And then if the answer is yes, we would love to talk to you about being baptized into Christ. Doesn't matter if you're listening in California or Cuba, and we got people listening in both places and everywhere in between, or if you're just right here in Byesville, if you just contact us, maybe send us an email, send us a message, call the building at the Stop 9 Church of Christ. We will talk to you about how to be baptized into Christ. Guys, I don't care what you're going through right now. The 107th Psalm teaches us about God's love, His faithfulness, His power, but most of all, about His amazing grace, Josh, and how we can shelter in that grace, that we can call to Him and thank Him. You can shelter in God's amazing grace to find guidance if you're just wandering through life and don't know what God wants you to do. You can shelter in God's amazing grace and find peace in the middle of those storms. You can shelter in God's amazing grace and find hope in your pain. You can shelter in God's amazing grace and find freedom when He removes those chains. So we encourage you to do that this week. Have a great week.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, be forever mine.
Hey guys, just a reminder that next Sunday, May 31st, we're going to be meeting at the Stop 9 Church of Christ, practicing, Josh, the social distancing skills. We'll have 3 services. You can go to the Stop 9 Church of Christ Facebook page, and we'll have all of the times and things that we're doing there. And we will be broadcasting that service almost live, at 9:30 on Sunday. And then on Wednesdays, Josh and I will be here. And every Wednesday night, we'll post it at 5. You can watch it at any time. We're going to be doing a preview of what's coming up that Sunday.
Right.
So we'll still be here on Wednesdays, and then you can still join us on Sunday for worship from the building at the Stop 9 Church. Have a great week.